All right, good morning, everyone. It is 10:45 here on Thursday. Welcome to this edition of LEAD. Appreciate those of you that are here and present with us live on this LEAD meeting, and also welcome to those that may be listening or watching the recording of this as well. If you know someone that isn't here or someone that hasn't viewed a recording before, please encourage them to do so. When we get to the agenda, you're going to see just a bounty of information here that's going to be really good across the state and acknowledge a lot of the work that we're doing. At the same time, we're on the verge of our spring tournaments about to begin. We have speech, robotics, our adapted sports and visual arts here starting next weekend in really consecutive weeks. So here we go again with tournaments. If we could go to our agenda at this time, we're going to review competitive section placement, bring you up to date on the timeline of where we're at with district football. Eric will bring us up to speed on rep assembly and what's before us in May. Laura is going to give us some information on some new website features. I've already heard from some how appreciative you are for those new features, so thank you. Just review and what we're hearing on 5-inning doubleheaders in softball and baseball. Talk about minimal behavior expectations for a regular season and postseason. Update you again around eligibility and homestead, along with things we need from you as member schools. Phil will finish us up with our quick takes and checklist. Again, as always, thank you so much for our lead liaisons, the information, the dialogue that we have with them that assist us in assembling this agenda. So at this time, we're going to move on to competitive section placement. Even due to the lateness of our MSH or our MDE enrollments, we stayed on schedule. We were able to complete that process, over 100 maps. Amanda Johnson here in our office has been a great assistance to this process. Want to acknowledge her publicly, along with Eric and Laura as well. Just remember where we're at in this cycle with those 100+ maps. The rounding and balancing was the emphasis this year. Again, we are in a 6-year cycle with that. Again, it's not only policy, but our practice when it comes to that geographic contiguity, along with the rounding and balancing. And also in this cycle, trying to make the fewest number of moves. Every time you move a school in class or section, it impacts everybody else there. We also continue to learn in this process that things like 7 and 9 teams don't always work, especially when we're talking about track or swimming. We do our best to work within the policy and the practice to assist, but always keeping in mind that it's never going to be perfect. We do our best. Please know that that was approved at the last board meeting here. And again, those maps are public. As we move on to district football, there's a number of people I see on this call right now. I'm looking at Ribsy, I'm looking at Derek, Eric Brever, just to name a few. This is a group that's done incredible work. 4 times they've met. We do have a couple meetings left, but I do want to acknowledge the work of our district football committee. We're really close. We believe that you will hear next week, at the end of the week, from potential district football chairs on where we're at in the process. The executive committee will be meeting on Thursday of next week, the executive committee of our board, hopefully to approve those districts at that time. And if you look at the next slide, what you're going to see is by next week, again, we're hoping to have more information to you on that Friday. Once those districts are approved, then you will begin the process of approving your sub-districts. Schedules will be built at that time. Please remember, no matter what you're seeing on social media or what's been released, nothing has been approved at this time. It's speculative, and some districts are closer than others, I would say, and maybe some classes closer than others as well. But please make sure that that is not that's not public or hasn't been approved as of yet. We want to be careful with releasing that information. At this time, I'm going to turn us over to Eric, and he's going to talk about rep assembly. Eric.
Thanks, Bob, and good morning, everybody. Coming to you from another remote location, but this is important information here. Just want to talk a little bit about process and make sure people understand and know that veterans probably have a good idea of how this works, but this is critical as we move forward. So there are 3 ways in which changes can be made within the Minnesota State High School League. The rep assembly process is specific to rewriting or adding in additional bylaws to our league. And so we've got board that can take care of policies, and we have school vote that addresses the Constitution. But this is how and where changes to bylaws ultimately happen. So annually, we will call the rep assembly according to our Constitution. There is the opportunity to have additional meetings that could be called by our board of directors or even directly from the president of the board of directors. But annually, we've been able to meet in May. That's our common time period. And action items come before the rep assembly based on submissions that come primarily from our member schools. From time to time, we get submissions from the board of directors. You can think back to some bylaw 110 change information, and that did come out of a task force and the board of directors. But most often it's our member schools that will submit amendment proposals, and then those go before our regions more often than not for their review. And if 9 or more of our regions support them, then it moves on to rep assembly. There is an opportunity for our board of directors to directly advance things to the representative assembly. And that requires a board supermajority, in other words, 2/3 or more, to say this is important and critical enough to be able to move directly onto the rep assembly. And you're going to see examples of both of these as we go to the next slide and work through the information here specific to rep assembly. Or if you want to make a quick change there. So our meeting is scheduled for May 9th. Minneapolis Marriott Northwest, and there are 2 proposed amendments. Both of these amendments have come through from member schools, a number of them signing off saying we believe that it is time to make adjustments. The first one is to set up a separate set of bylaws for adapted sports. And again, a number of schools working directly with MAAA, which is our Adapted Athletics Association here in Minnesota, as well as communicating with our board of directors, created this set of bylaws that would take, for example, softball and create its own separate adapted softball bylaw, would create the adapted bowling bylaw, and so on for floor hockey and also for soccer. So this has been in front of our regions already and has been reviewed, and it was unanimous from all of our regions that this bylaw be forwarded on and be in front of the rep assembly with the support of our regions. And that one is up for vote. The second one, which everyone is aware that boys volleyball continues to be part of what we are discussing and making decisions on. And this came forward again from a number of schools. In this case, likely 70 or more schools signing off on the rep assembly amendment to make one simple change in the bylaw 520 that says girls volleyball and change it to say boys and girls volleyball. And that is a decision that will be in front of the rep assembly. But there's more information that I think is critical within this process. And so following the vote in 2022, which was a very close vote, but did not pass, the board of directors took a look at the situation relative to boys volleyball and said, this has been challenging on a number of fronts. And we need a process that might provide more clarity, be more transparent and understandable for our schools and for others who are following it. So the board called the adoption task force and said, build a process by which new activities can be studied and eventually moved forward if they meet certain criteria and rubrics. And so in December, the board approved an emerging status process for incoming interscholastic activities. And they also, in the same board meeting in December, approved boys volleyball to go to the rep assembly, or they approved boys volleyball to be in emerging status for the coming year, not for the current year. Current year will still continue to be part of Minnesota boys volleyball, but next year, boys volleyball will be in emerging status, which allows the league to work together with the current governing body to learn more and be prepared for ultimately the adoption under the league umbrella as an interscholastic sport. You see that next line that says there was unanimous board support to approve this onto the rep assembly and to be approved at the rep assembly meeting coming here in May. And so within that, we see the number of teams continuing to grow. I believe the number right now of school teams that exist and follow our arrangement for either individual schools or co-ops is 72. and the current number of student participants, which is well more than a number of our sports or activities that already exist within the league, continues to grow as well, right? They have created a process where girls volleyball rules and current competition is what's being used within our boys volleyball. So the vote that takes place in May is directly on whether or not boys volleyball will be sanctioned as a full interscholastic sport beginning in 24-25. Would offer that what we've learned is that making votes and making decisions with some time of implementation is really helpful for schools to be able to be prepared and to make that happen. You'll recognize down below that the State High School League knows and understands that a season has not been selected at this time. This falls straight in line with the responsibilities that the league has. And just like you just saw with district football and has happened to an adoption task force, a group of member school representatives would be brought together to take a look at all the information. We recognize there's been a fair amount of feedback relative to this. The vote is not about the season at this time. The vote is about the sport of boys volleyball. And is it time to bring that forward? I would suggest that the board's unanimous support is significant within this, recognizing the potential impacts that votes can have outside of the control of the Minnesota State High School League. And I would say that what I've heard from others, and I would agree with 100%, is we function best when we're able to control our destiny and not have other forces create those for us. So, Bob, apologize a little longer maybe than folks might have anticipated. What did I miss, or what might you add?
Really well done there, Eric. And I'm getting some chat messages here right now on it and some good questions out there. I think it's really important to remember that why this is before Rep Assembly is we are changing the bylaws, right? So the bylaws adding boys volleyball would be changing that bylaw. Again, I think there's multiple questions that can be answered. Once we get this question answered at our Rep Assembly, I believe Rep Assembly is one of our best processes that represents all of our member schools. If you don't believe that what's the questions on the docket here this year will impact you, you are a member school, we need your voice and we need you to be heard. This is a very important question or questions that are being asked. And again, we would like to control our own business here with the Minnesota State High School League along with our member schools, as opposed to having it influenced by us or for us. So Eric, really nice job. Thank you for giving us that information from Indianapolis. At this time on a rainy, wet day here in the metro area, we're going to talk about 5-inning double headers. Go ahead, Lisa. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Bob. Just as we are experiencing a great amount of rain here in the metro today, and many of you are experiencing that as well, we know that the spring has been challenging. We have approved 5-inning doubleheaders by mutual agreement of schools. It's really important to remember that you may play a 7-inning game first and then a 5-inning game after, according to NFHS rules. It is also important to note that in 2003, this year, we also approved that you may play 2 different opponents. So first game could be one opponent, and for the second game, it could be a different opponent. So we know that you guys are working hard to get those baseball and softball games in, and these are some modifications that we heard from you would help make those things more realistic and feasible. It is really important to note that single games must still be played under NFHS rules and require 7 innings or a regulation game per those guidelines. Anything else, Bob, I'm missing with 5-inning doubleheaders?
No, continue to ask questions if you have them. I just so appreciate our schools doing whatever you can, no matter what the sport or activity is, to accommodate each other. Great stories out there of schools from the north traveling to the south quite some distances just to get those contests in. I appreciate our board approving the flexibility for softball and baseball. And at this time, we're actually going to back up a slide. Great information here, updates on our websites. Laura, let us know what schools can expect on the new website features.
Thanks, Bob, and good morning, everyone. I want to share with you a new feature, a newer feature, and an up-and-coming feature. The first one, I think, as we look at our spring, is going to be a well-welcomed feature. We now have on your AD dashboard 2 officials searches that pull information in directly from Arbiter. Until this point, to find officials, you had to have a login to Arbiter and go directly there to find that. That now pulls in directly to your dashboard. Those are synced once a night for both varsity and non-varsity eligible. And you can see on the screenshot here, those are now located underneath directories. You'll notice that those pull in current eligibilities, which are those officials who have met all of the requirements to be eligible for contests in this school year. There is also a checkbox where you can check eligibilities from the previous year. A caution that should be used only to hire officials seasons out. For example, if you're looking for your track officials back in the fall, you may want to see who was eligible last year. You need to continue to use the current eligibilities to ensure that those folks are eligible for the current school year. There are a couple little pieces in there that aren't quite 100% done yet, but at 98% in the spring we're having, getting that out to folks should be very helpful. As you start to use it and have any feedback, would love to hear that from you. Otherwise, please take some time and explore those 2 new buttons on your dashboard. A reminder also that about a month ago, we rolled out want ads, which includes coaches wanted, games wanted, as well as activities staff wanted. Now that a number of you have used that for your coaches wanted, we are going to begin to push that out on social media and help prospective coaches know that that is a resource for them to go to. Please feel free also to push that information out in any way that you have to let folks know that that is there. A reminder that want ads can be only posted by folks in your office, and there's a button on your dashboard for want ads. The screenshot over on the right-hand side under About and MSHSL want ads is where the public gets to these. And again, that's what we'll start sharing out on our social media channels, and any way that you have to share that information out is also helpful. Games wanted, that is where you should be going for now to do games wanted. It will take us through this year to sunset the M&I AAA opportunity that they provided to us for the last 2 years or so, and then that will sunset at the end of this school year. And then finally, we continue to hear and know, and from some conversations at M&I AAA, that a real challenge from the website is the getting coaches connected to your school and to the right activities. So we are working for a new rollout in the fall that will simplify that extremely for you. It may take a little bit more work in the fall to realign some of your coaches, but at that point, we feel that you're going to be good to go and much easier from then on out. So watch for that, watch for information about that, maybe reaching out to some of you to do a little bit of testing and checking for us. But we've acknowledged and continue to hear that that is just a challenge, getting coaches connected to your school and to their right sport. So that is a big undertaking for us this summer. Bob, I'll turn it back to you for anything that I might have missed or to move forward.
Yeah, what a great resource there and added resources. Laura, I think this is an example of how fluid the development of our website is. These are things that we have talked about for some time. They are now a reality. So thank you for your work on that. We've had great dialogue with our liaisons throughout the year, really around behaviors that we're experiencing during the regular season and postseason. Again, Charlie's going to review with you really a minimal set of expectations, where they exist and what those are, and those live under education. So Charlie, take it from here. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. As a refresher, Bylaw 409 outlines the responsibility of the school for the proper conduct of its participants and spectators at all high school league contests. This past week, as Bob mentioned, league staff has spent time with our liaisons and also our education advisory, reviewing that board policy language that accompanies Bylaw 409. The MSHSL minimal behavior expectations policy exists to help you create and maintain an acceptable standard of conduct at all of your contests. Laura, I'll have you advance to the next slide now. And here you'll be able to see a screenshot of the bulleted list of expectations within the policy. Please know that we heard from both Education Advisory and our liaisons that this language really assists you as ADs and the rest of your school admin team in teaching, communicating, and upholding the behavior expectations in your school community. We also heard from these groups that there's a desire to review and refresh this language for the 23-24 school year, and it's appropriate that we do so. But you can find the current language that you're viewing on this slide in each sport or activities rules and policies document. So it is available and accessible for you to review and share with those that you feel you may need to. The rules and policies documents are cataloged in the matrix at the bottom of the handbook page on the website. That's accessible on the public side of the website. In summary, please know that this language exists. Use it. Don't be surprised by it when we get into postseason events as they commence a little bit later this spring. With that, Bob, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, great job, Charlie, and thank you acknowledging for that ed leadership work as well. This is language that you can utilize to assist you within your own communities, and you have the flexibility to do so. So another useful tool. Bylaw 111 did change going into this year. One of the changes that took place involves homestead and that classification, and Lisa's going to walk us through that and how that impacts Bylaw 111. Lisa? Lisa, we're going to have you unmute and then speak to us, Lisa. Thank you.
Sorry about that. As we know, spring is a time that leads to summer and transition for many of our families. As our families are transitioning, here in our office, we see lots of questions around homesteading and what constitutes moving into a new residence. There's some great, 6 great examples of things you can use, and homesteading is one of them. And this is just some information from the Department of Revenue that really is a good guideline for what is a homestead. Is if you're owning the property and if you're occupying the property as your sole or primary residence. And obviously being a Minnesota resident. Some things that qualify as residents include gardens, garages, and outbuildings on that property. And so it's really important as you're working with families and as they move from one school to another that you're communicating with the sending school AD, as well as the family, to make sure that we are finding provisions and telling them information that is up to date and factual. And so that's kind of a piece that we're just asking you to review as we move into summer. Bob, anything else on that?
Yeah, no, great job. While language like gardens and garages may not help you as much, focus on if they own the property when they have multiple residences and what is their primary residence when you're making interpretations as to whether or not there's a bona fide residence change. That is the language that is to assist you in making that determination. Great job, Lisa. And at this time, we're going to turn it over again to Laura to talk about annual requirements for our member schools. Laura?
Thanks, Bob. Each spring, the league asks you to complete a number of requirements that both close out and prepare for the upcoming school year. You can expect information from us on Monday, May 8th, that asks you for these 3 things. There are some things right now that you can be doing to prepare for these so that your turnaround time, again, in a very busy spring, allows you to complete these. The first thing that we will ask you for is to register for your activities for 23-24. And again, that will be a form that'll come to you. It'll be pre-filled with your current activities, and then you will also add any other activities. Now is the time that you could be talking with others within your school and or district about any potential changes for next year. Boys volleyball will be an option on that registration for next year. And as Eric said earlier, it is an emerging activity sport in 23-24, and that is set regardless of what rep assembly does. So if your school intends to participate in boys volleyball in 23-24, registering with the league will make them eligible for postseason and also provide insurance for that team. Participation numbers is the second thing that we ask schools for. At this point, you can be compiling those numbers. We will be asking you for a number of males and females participating per sport, which becomes a long list for some of you with many sports and activities. And then we'll be asking you for one non-duplicated female number and one non-duplicated male number. And then those also broken out by grade levels. So again, you can begin compiling that information. We'll be getting a worksheet out to you shortly that you can use, and then those will be able to be entered after that May 8th date. And then finally, a reminder that each school board or board of control for every member school signs a resolution each summer as part of their membership. Those of you that have been here before, or those of you that are new, know that you probably want to work with somebody in your school to get that on the board agenda in June or July for your school board. Often school boards meet less frequently over the summer, so working with your superintendent or head of school at this point to make sure that that is on a board agenda for June or July, again, will allow you to meet those deadlines. The deadlines for activity registration and participation numbers will be the end of May. So you'll have approximately 3 weeks to complete those. And then the deadline for the resolution for membership is an August 1st deadline. So you have the summer to complete that with your school board. At that, I will throw it back to Bob for anything that I might have missed or to move forward.
No, well stated, Laura. Phil, take us home here with our last, 4 minutes here with quick takes and our checklist. Go ahead, Phil. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. Good to see everybody on here. I've never had 4 minutes to talk about quick takes in the checklist before, so we'll roll with this here. So first thing here, we've got our student advisory team, our leadership team. Many of you have heard of SALT before. They've done some really good things in creating opportunities for our students across the state to have statewide conversations on leadership, current things happening in their spaces, and basically have conversations to steer the direction of aspects of education in and around the state. So applications for that are coming up here, and they are available on the website. The online application is under who you are, click under students, and then you'll go to MSHSL SALT. There also will be some information that will go out in the Thursday update that Laura sends out every week, with some links and some other things that make it a little bit more accessible or easier for you to navigate to get to. So the cutoff for that is in early May. I believe it's May 6th. And like I said, there'll be some more information that goes out in the update. Just a quick reminder on the baseball pitch count that all teams are required to enter their own pitch count. So stay on top of that and keep your coaches informed and reminded on staying in front of that. And now for a couple of things on preparing for next year. So the 23-24 calendar has been approved by our board, and the season and tournament calendars are up on that calendar page and accessible for you and your school to start planning for next year. Area meetings are also up on there, and they are available on the resources under MSHSL resources on your dashboard. So access those as needed and plan for our upcoming school year. Another quick note is that appropriate healthcare professional language has been modified. Now, what this is essentially creating more of an opportunity for properly licensed medical practitioners to be able to perform the sports qualifying physical for your student athletes. So making it a little bit more accessible and easier for your families to get those physicals knocked out. On the note of physicals, our physical forms for 23-24 are up on the MSHSL website, and they can be found on your dashboard under eligibility. And then lastly on this slide, talking about our cross-country coaches. In the past, cross-country coaches have not been required to complete an online rules meeting, and that meeting is now required and will be available for the fall. So just a quick note on making sure that your fall cross-country coaches are up to speed in that new requirement that they are needed to do before coaching. Move on. All right, lastly here on the checklist before we pass it to Bob to bring it all home. looking at your student participation, your student participants, making sure they are eligible, and also verifying that your coaches have completed their coaches' education requirements. This is not just a thing to check on at state tournament time. This is something for you to be working on or have a good handle on throughout your regular season contests and competitions. Referring to bylaw 413 on your minimum number of required officials. I want to say that is page 75 through 77 in your handbook, very easily accessible. And there's a nice chart in there that give you the number of officials required for all of your competitions. Laura mentioned this earlier. I want to stay on top to continue tabulating your participation numbers and working towards determining your activities for 23-24. And there's some stuff in there with volleyball and things along those lines. So just make sure you're staying on top of that work. And then as we are moving into our summer coaching waivers will be submitted by our coaches. If there's questions or concerns on that, make sure you're communicating with your coaches to get that in so that we don't have any eligibility issues on the legal contact over the summer. So with that, Bob, that kind of wraps up our checklists and our quick takes, and I'll pass it back to you.
Very good. Thank you, Phil. We'll see you on May 11th. Hang in there with your schedules between games and busing. We can only imagine. Better weather is coming. If not, we have bigger problems. Again, thank you for all your work, and we will see you on May 11th, if not sooner. Thank you.